Cody Williams established himself as one of the nation's best freshmen early this season, but a wrist injury, fractured orbital bone, and most prominently an ankle injury caused him to miss some games and impacted his performance down the stretch. At 6'7" with a 7'1" wingspan, Williams is on the slimmer side, but he has the ideal tools for a wing. He's got upside as a slasher and off-ball scorer. He's versatile defensively, and there's a role you can see him playing in the league. Now, he's going to have to get stronger to improve in nearly every aspect. He's still got questions in his shot given the lower volume and priors, and that makes him more of an unfinished product, even accounting for the injuries. However, he has a game worthy of considering in the lottery. The current defining piece of Cody's offensive game is his touch and finishing ability at the rim and the overall upside that he has as a slasher. He's a fluid mover with long strides that doesn't waste many steps when attacking. He loves to use push crosses and spins to get to his spot and had some success playing as a ball handler in the pick and roll. He was also solid at attacking shifted defenses and getting into gaps quickly, and most importantly, he was prolific at the bucket, finishing nearly 75% of his total opportunities, mostly due to what's an excellent amount of touching close and the ability to use either hand fluidly and do it in high traffic situations. Now, he doesn't have the physical tools to overpower or win with explosiveness, and we'll touch on how that gets him into trouble at times, but he did find a way to use different angles and levels of the backboard to convert. He also has an intriguing floater and post hook game, and when you're converting at that percentage on decent volume, which he was, it's always going to stand out. Now, to really see more of this come to fruition in the NBA, he's going to have to continue growing physically, add to the handle, and just make that adjustment to this game, and also be a little more assertive to take what's available, but he's got a really solid base to eventually contribute in this way and do it seamlessly in a complementary role.
You call so many games at the next level. How frequent is it, though, that it's not about just your simple burst as Cody?
He's just not in shape. This is only his third game of the season, Dante.
And right there.
Williams trying to find some room.
The winner gets Oregon tomorrow in our final over on Fox. Oh man.
But normally when he comes off the bench, some guys like to get into the flow of the game. He just shoots the first possession he's in.
This Florida State roster. Cody Williams at the taken man.
Cross court, Williams catches, drives inside.
Oil going. When he wasn't in practice, he's doing a lot of studying.
His year of college, he's seen just about everything.
How about backboard all the way to the
Vincent Brown, the very talented freshman. He was shot ready. Williams runner.
He's been an irritant in this one for sure.
Cody Williams.
What a force he is.
Here's Williams putting it on the deck. The floater is good. Beautiful move. Here's Williams, runner.
Are going to need to rely on the leadership of De Silva and KJ Simpson down the stretch.
The other night was honestly the first one in 2 months, regardless of sport or level, as Williams makes it.
I also liked what he did as a cutter and mover without the ball. He's got solid awareness and quickly back cut whenever teams would overplay him or deny him the ball off their dribble handoff looks. He often moved his way into open opportunities weak side just through reading the defense and teams being keyed in on KJ Simpson or any post actions that featured Lampkin or De Silva. He also executed sets and he created a handful of open looks for his teammates just getting out of areas, and once again he converted at a high clip in these situations. As someone that's almost certainly going to be an off-ball player first, even at his absolute best, this is always a key to be able to improvise and play off of others for easy opportunities, and I thought he showed enough of that to expect it in the league, though he may not become elite at it.
To play in the first half. Simpson inside to Williams, back to Handley, a triple.
And they're truly fighting for the NCAA tournament lives. You see it.
I don't know if he's coaching at the Kings. Is he still at the Kings? Here's a lot.
He's also intriguing in transition. In fact, that was where I felt like we saw him at his most dynamic and creative as a driver in terms of using different pickups, euros, and change of pace in order to create an advantage. And whenever you got someone who's able to take it end to end at his size off the glass or a turnover, it's always a valuable skill. It was his most efficient and highest volume play type this season, and though it's one of those things that can't be relied upon for production every game for players that aren't lead ball handlers or just freak athletes, there are some real takeaways here. He changes ends well, he has pretty good acceleration when he decides to turn it on, and he showed a little sneaky bounce when he can get to that left leg. He runs lanes, he's got good pacing here, and even knocked down a handful of threes. And on top of all this, he was probably at his best as a passer here too, often having his eyes up, pushing the ball ahead, and finding teammates across the court.
Here comes Colorado, KJ KJ Simpson gives it up. Here's Cody Williams.
By Ellis. Here's Williams in transition with the alley.
There ends up with KJ Simpson. And in the hands of their freshman.
Williams and getting to the rim. It's been impressive too. Nice look to Silva. Hits the three.
First bucket, he's got 4.
Nice pass.
Great pass. And Lampkin knows
It's stripped away. And Colorado's got another steal. Nice lead. Simpson missed on.
24-point lead for Colorado.
Defensively, while he is a work in progress, there's a whole lot to be intrigued by, and I came away more confident in his ability to make an impact here than I was earlier in the year. At 6'7" with a 7'1" wingspan, he has the ideal dimensions of a defensive wing. He's not the quickest laterally or the most adept at mirroring, but he gets the job done. He recovers well and stays attached to many different types of players. He rarely gets completely blown by and did a good job of using his length to contest in a variety of situations, but especially in close. He often matched up with guards and held his own, even at a bit of a disadvantage. His screen navigation, while still developing, was actually pretty solid for someone his size. He's still going to add strength there specifically, but he's flexible enough to do it and gave effort, which is key for anyone playing on the perimeter in today's game.
Hesitation there. Tracy taking it to Williams. All the way in, missing.
Best in school history. The best over a 2-year span was 14 in a row as Williams gets the block.
He goes right past Cody Williams, who's struggling to get back in.
The technicals and USC ball down 13. But with Jackson Shellstead, Jermaine Couisnard, they've gotten off to over a Colorado team that is 13-0 at home for the first time ever.
Bellamy pulls up a 6 on the shot.
Cone down the lane.
How do you leave him defensively? That's Couisnard. How do you leave Cody Williams there?
They've again had that slow start, finished 4 for 4 field goals after a 1-9 start in September.
Right, there's also an R and a Y. Well, yeah, but
Field goals.
Freshman against freshman here on the block. Oh.
You know, I was so excited when I saw that he was mock draft picked the #1. I wanted to see what he could do.
Off the ball, I would say he has decent feel for his responsibilities and was in the right spots more often than not. Now, he can still clean up a lot of rotations and be more on point as a low man. He's not much of a secondary rim protector or someone that's cleaning up mistakes, but I think long term he'll be fine here. You want to see more activity in passing lanes and as an event creator, but he can stay solid, succeed from multiple parts of the floor, and with a little more direction, limit some of those freshman mistakes that we saw. If he can improve physically and be more consistent, he's a really solid bet as an impactful wing defender. He may not have a true elite trait on this end at the moment, but he's versatile. He didn't make a ton of mistakes, and in every interview I've seen for years, he's mentioned making this a point of emphasis, and I think that makes him a pretty good person to bet on.
5 on hand to watch the players in this one.
A lot of prospects here. Of course, Cody Williams probably at the top of the list.
The most obvious and important improvement area for Cody is getting stronger and adding to his frame, as it impacts most things that he struggles with in some way. He does have a frame and shoulders that suggest he'll be able to add to his body, and while most of the comparisons to his brother are unfair, I do think that's something that you can actually make a strong connection between. But he's currently 178 pounds, which is just 14 pounds heavier than Rob Dillingham, so that tells you pretty much everything you need to know. Now on court, my biggest issue in his results as a driver, and why I'm not like all the way in on him there, is the type of angles that he had to take, the way he was knocked off his driving lane, and his ball security. Sure, the NBA has more space than he was working with, but it's going to be difficult to adjust to the NBA game if he stays anywhere near this area build-wise. He's also not particularly explosive or powerful with the ball either, so this is a huge area in order for him to play his game and unlock what could potentially be pretty special if he is able to make that adjustment.
Beautiful. High school when he's at San Ramon. And we played in the Reardon tournament when I was at De La Salle.
And then on the defensive side, as we hinted earlier, he got completely taken out of plays by different types of players, but specifically guards that he was matched up with early on. If he's on the floor, I think that's going to be a glaring weakness of his, especially because he isn't the type of mover I think can handle NBA guards or just hound people on the perimeter. So that means nearly every wing in the league he's at a disadvantage early. Just being able to absorb contact, cut down on some of those paint touches, and continue to use his length when he is at a disadvantage will be important. So from the slashing to the defense to many of his turnovers, improving physically is the first order of operations to find a niche and have an opportunity of contributing, and then eventually reach much higher levels of impact.
Ellis penetrating, spinning with one. Oh, beautiful finish. Third big. Mara, a freshman, who's really improved over the course of the season. That last turnover. Williams guarding Collier. A step back three from Collier is on the money.
An instructional video on how to move the defense with your eyes. That was awesome. That's Eric.
Now the other big question is in his three-point shot. He was at 41% this year, including 43% off the catch, but when it's just 17 makes in only 11 games and he's had a history of struggling, shooting just 20% on 76 catch and shoot attempts in the EYBL a couple summers ago, it obviously doesn't give me the same level of confidence that number might in other circumstances. Now mechanically, I think once he gets stronger, improves his footwork and shot prep at the base, everything else will mostly work itself out. The improvement he did make this season was necessary and felt, especially on this level, and in certain games he had, like against Oregon where he knocked them down in a few ways, but the low volume, rough priors, and questionable release is always going to make me more hesitant, and to me it's absolutely vital this becomes a prominent piece of his game. Now I would bet on his work ethic and touch getting him to be capable at higher volume, but until we've seen it, it's harder to truly bank on.
Marquette is doing a great job here keeping not only defensive pressure on, but offensive pressure on. O'Brien. And a three by Williams into the first half.
Up 10, 36-26. Williams, 4-3.
And finally, I talked about this coming into the year and in the first look video, but his lack of a pull-up and handle struggles are stuff that I think he'll need to address. Now, he could do without the pull-up and be fine if he reaches a certain level as a shooter and develops physically in some capacity, but it becomes a much harder sell when we're talking top 7 and star wing upside. His footwork, fluidity, and comfort getting to these shots just hasn't been there, and if his only real counter is a spin into a contested hook or a floater off one, he's much easier to stop as a slasher. His handle led to a good amount of giveaways. His turnover rate was at 20, which is a 20% usage and a 10% assist rate. And though his end of the season stretch really damaged these advanced numbers, and I would caution trusting as heavily as some other players, it's not a great group of wings who have ever been drafted in that vicinity. Now he's a solid enough passer, he's unselfish, and I think he'll do just fine in moving the ball, making one mores, and not turning the ball over via passes, but there is still some work he can do as a playmaker off his own drives and in the pick and roll.
21-6. The steal was made by Brian Salabange.
This is multiple things.
And he's 6'6". Defends down low, plays down low. Williams,
57% from three this season. He doesn't shoot a lot of them. But you can see how good that form is. Really smooth energy transfer. And another steal.
But you got to have a mix. Player development and some transfers. Cody Williams had it poked away. And it's off of
And De Silva back to Williams. Thought three. Takes it in. Meets two. That's all they're playing. 7 seconds. You got to go. Now it's 5. Here comes Williams. Dak open from the corner. And bang on with it. A silky smooth freshman. Great feet inside.
A one for each team. Williams right now with the ball. He's got 4. Drives, finds De Silva, who's fouled.
Sometimes they can do it for a half, but can they do it against a nice Oregon opponent?
2.5 minutes in.
For the visiting team, you cannot take that big run and let the crowd get into it and let the momentum build. There's a beautiful.
But the game is kind of settled into what I talk about right off the top, a half-court game, not as much transition.
Screen the zone, could create a gap and a seam to drive. De Silva hits a throw.
CU ball movement has been
Hadley selfishly gives it up. Long triple.
I think Cody Williams will fit in best as an off-ball wing who excels finishing plays, attacking closeouts, and shifting defenses, and best case could do a little complementary creating as like a third or fourth option. And then defensively, I like his upside and think he'll eventually be impactful as a versatile wing defender and someone that could make his presence felt here first. The majority of his outcome will be determined by his physical development, and then after that is mainly where the shot goes and just how much he's able to do with the ball. He'll likely land anywhere from the mid-lottery to the mid-teens, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him end up on the lower end of that. And then teams like Utah, Portland, San Antonio, and Chicago are some of my favorite potential landing spots for him. Comparison-wise, I think Jaden McDaniels is ultimately the blueprint for him. Now, J-Mac is obviously elite defensively now, and Cody will have a long ways to go before he's there. But if I'm in his camp or I'm drafting him, that's the guy to emulate and add to it where he's a little different. And then on the lower end, there are some similarities between him and Zaire Williams.
Against Utah. Dribble drive, attacking.
Cody Williams has plenty of the pieces to become an eventual contributor in the NBA as a lanky wing who can finish at the rim, make a play, and defend in multiple spots. Now, his injuries did affect the season, and a bigger sample probably would have made certain things a little clearer, but I think he's a fine upside pick. I don't expect a lot of production early, but in the right situation with some runway, I think he makes sense for a good amount of teams to eventually contribute and do whatever the team needs.